All right. Hello, everyone. This is Mitch from the Blue Table Podcast, and today is November the 13th. And today we're going to be doing a real quick election recap featuring Jaychele. You know, it's been a long time since you've seen her on this podcast. You know, a long time since she touched the mic, but we had to make sure she returned for this very important topic. Today I'm also here with my co-work, my fellows, Phil and Michael, and we're about to have a great conversation. All right. So, to get started, Jaychele, for those listeners who are not familiar with who you are, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Jaychele. I'm currently a junior here. I'm a double major studying diversity, equity, and inclusion and public relations with a marketing minor. So if I were to simplify that, it basically means I like to do multicultural marketing and communicate to diverse audiences while prioritizing their needs. But on top of that, I'm also the president of Black Unity Body, and I'm also a former member of this podcast as well. So I'm very happy to be here.
Got a stacked resume. Wow.
Very busy.
All right. So today we're going to be the first topic we're going to be talking about is the campaign promises in the first 100 days. So do any of you have any particular thoughts about the first 100 days or the plan that, our new president-elect Donald Trump has for the upcoming, for the future? Or are there any policies that you think Kamala Harris might have been able to handle better, or any particular thoughts whatsoever?
Yeah, I think the most egregious, policy he's focused on for his first 100 days is the mass deportations that he's looking to do. I think throughout this election, the idea of immigration and the handling of the whole immigration system that we've seen recently has really been a key factor of why a lot of people voted for Trump, or why they were opposed to voting for Kamala, because she was seen as the border czar or in control of the border during the Biden administration. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the policies that were failed to pass in relation to immigration and the border were due to the split House and Senate. So there wasn't really the ability for her to do anything through the actual Congress that would have restricted the border. So now that we're seeing Trump, start to make his plans to kind of create that executive order that he's really known for. If you remember when he was first president, his first 100 days, he did the travel ban, so not allowing Muslim people to travel in and out of the U.S. I think it's something very similar to what we're going to see. He's just going to sign an executive order, and because he does actually have the House and Senate and the whole Supreme Court on his side, we're going to see those deportations happen soon. So I think it's going to be a very, very dangerous first 100 days for sure, in my opinion.
That's very interesting that you say that.
Yeah, I guess to build upon that, it is definitely very worrisome looking at it. A lot of things could potentially go very bad with this going in motion. Mm-hmm. And also there's so many more implications just for part of just away from immigration as well. There's so many implications beyond that, like how schooling and higher education would work with FAFSA and the lack of visas that are going to be supplied as well. Yeah. This is something that's going to reduce a large amount of international students coming to USA-based institutions, which overall will reduce a major amount of FAFSA money that is paid for students who desperately need it.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate. Dang, I didn't even know that. Honestly, I wasn't thinking about it that way.
I think even on top of that, seeing who he's started to appoint for different departments is very telling as well. I think the major concern for me when he was running was the fact that he wanted to appoint RFK Jr. as the head of Department of Health, and he's anti-vax and doesn't believe in any vaccines or safety protocols, especially for students. He really doesn't believe in vaccinating your children, and he's a conspiracy theorist. So that's really scary for me. And then also seeing that he's trying to appoint Elon Musk to a position with Vivek in relation to the economy and global innovation. Very scary knowing how Elon was honestly interfering in the election too. I think it was very much a deal that they made. I think there's a lot of backroom dealings when it comes to I would say Trump's party in specific, because of how much it is really under his rule. I feel when you look at like Democratic Party, they focus a little bit more on like hearing a couple of like different opinions. So like I think this election was really kind of decided by like Barack Obama, Biden, Kamala, and Nancy Pelosi. But if you look at the other side, I think it's just like Trump is the only one who's in control. So I think it's also like that balance of power is not there at all.
I definitely agree. You know, I'm looking at this article right now, and I'm looking. One of the quotes that Donald Trump had was, "I want to close the border, and I want to drill, drill, drill." And I'm thinking, you know, like that is a very decisive statement to make, because I'm thinking about, like, you know, all the ESG policies. For example, like I remember taking the Bloomberg thing on ESG and how important that is. And we can already feel it now, how we have like significant global warming. You know, just last week we were outside in T-shirts and shorts. Like, it's kind of crazy. And, I feel like closing the border, starting with the first presidency, having like the wall beginning to be built and seeing how, like, I'm not sure how much that helped anything. I'm not really sure how much that really did what he wanted to do. So I feel like it's going to be, kind of crazy to see how it continues.
Yeah, I think one of his other policies, too, was in order to, like, help limit the illegal immigration from Mexico, he wanted to put, like, a 25% tariff on Mexico for all of their goods that's being
25%.
imported. Yeah, and then, like, we can speak about his economic policies later, but he also, like, wants to impose tariffs on, like, other countries as well, which would, like, drastically raise the prices for, like, our everyday goods. So I think that, like, it basically reflects onto the economy, all of his immigration policies. And I think obviously immigration does like very much tie into the economy and, the job market and everything like that. But I think when we specifically look at it like from like we're going to impose tariffs to try to make sure that like Mexico does its part to like stop border crossings, that's not really helpful at all. And I don't think the wall even really got built, to be honest. I think it was like
they had some sections of it.
Yeah, some sections, but like they never like fully completed it because they couldn't afford it. So.
Yeah, and then another thing that's very telling is I think it's a very good choice to judge a person's character off their rhetoric and who they surround themselves with. In analyzing Trump's rhetoric, he presses a lot of bad negativity, as well as he surrounds himself with people who are necessarily not the greatest presses. So, like, even tapping in towards, like, more like media press, Elon Musk, Aiden Ross, people who are known to say and promote very...
Oh, Joe Rogan, too.
Joe Rogan as well. People who are known to promote very terrible things. And he willingly surrounds himself with it and even shouts him out in a presidential speech. I think it speaks a lot, speaks very much volume of a character.
That's definitely true. Another thing that I'm seeing here is that... Hold on. Okay, yeah, so... about the immigration, he was revoking the temporary protected status that allowed migrants to legally work in the U.S. or use local police for deportation programs. But these efforts will likely face many challenges. And I'm thinking, it says that according to the American Immigration Council, this would cost $7.3 billion. So I know that since high school, the first econ class I took, we were looking at the deficit that we're in. And I'm just thinking, I don't really know where the money is going to be coming from. And also says that he would order more fracking and use of oil on the first day of his presidency. And I think that's I don't know. As a person who is more leaning towards the future, more a sustainable future, like we're using, solar energy, wind energy, electric cars. I know they also have their downsides, but moving away from oil and fossil fuels, that is very concerning for me.
Yeah, I definitely agree, especially because of how much environmental damage it has. Because, greenhouse gases, they, can come up with, carbon dioxide and then methane, which is really bad for us. And along with that, there's so much so much volatility in terms of prices because it gets so expensive to the point where it'll it'll damage us more than it already has. So I think that it just has such a big impact that people need to realize.
Yeah, I definitely agree. All right. Well, the next thing I wanted to talk about was the resources and here at Bentley University particularly, I feel like there wasn't much of an emphasis placed on how important it was for us to vote as students, especially, first of all, how many students are Massachusetts residents, Connecticut, New York, even some places that are close enough that we're able to, participate actively in the, democratic process. So I feel like if we should have definitely had a little bit more of that, in my opinion, but I'm curious to hear what you all think as well.
Yeah, for me, I definitely thought up until like a week before that we had the day off of school. For sure. I completely thought that we had the day off. And I was speaking with a couple of friends from other schools, and I know that Tufts is another private university, and they were able to take the day off of school, and it was a decision made by their president. So it really kind of makes me question, in terms of priorities, where Bentley lies. I think we always play like neutral and play the middleman and everything like that. And I think that I have my own personal views on whether or not that's acceptable in certain situations. But I know we did have a program through the Bentley Service Learning Center called Bentley Votes, and they were like having I guess A-frames up on like how to register to vote and everything like that. But at the same time, I think a lot of the work was really done by like student organizations, honestly, like reposting. Like I know I was leading a lot of the BEB work to like get out and vote, like making sure that we're posting videos, reminding people about deadlines, because it is a very intricate process on like getting registered to vote and making sure that you can vote on time. And none of that information was really provided unless you saw like the A-frames or you went to like the Bentley Votes event. Like we didn't get like an email of like, this is how you can register to vote in your state. Like I think we send out emails for things all the time. And like, I think something as simple as that from the president would have been so beneficial. Like, and it was just like radio silence, like day after to day of, just like, okay, we just have to act like this is just like not going on and that this isn't affecting people's like daily lives, so that people aren't going to be like in a mental health crisis after like the results come out. And I think it was just so absent-minded. I don't think that they were really prioritizing like how students were going to be deeply invested in this election, because it is the first time a lot of us are voting too. So I think that even like really deepens the connection, and it's a really missed opportunity for Bentley to become, civically engaged, which I think that as a business school, we do business for good. I think we need to have a little bit more of like deeper conversations about like what our presence in, political state looks like. Especially I was talking with Mitch before we got on the air about, state by state elections. We do have a lot of Massachusetts residents in the area, and Mass laws affect the Bentley community as well. So I think just being more aware of those things and just like having more resources available, like you were saying, for our students to become more engaged and not just have it be through, one specific office or through the work of student organizations that like aren't getting enough money to do this work, to be transparent.
Yeah, I agree with that. Honestly, overall, I feel like there was a lack of conversation just as a whole. I feel like most of the conversation was led either through student organizations, especially through the MCC. I know we all have gotten emails being reached out to, which is very nice. That is something that is very accommodating. And then on top of that, the only other person I've had really speak about the election in such straight terms is I'm taking a context and perspective of women in literature. And that teacher was the only teacher that willingly wanted to talk about it. It's like, on the fact that Bentley could have done more to reach out, email, and send resources out, nothing was present of that. Everything was done through student organization, which honestly is a very good thing. But however, we need both collaboration between the university as well as student organization, because that will truly foster more of a better community around it. And I know there were watch parties held viewing the election. But I think even that, I'm not even sure if that, was that only held in the MCC or was that held in Harry's as well? Cause
I don't know if there was one in Harry's, but I did one with BB in the MCC through like just a regular election watch. Then we also did something for the debate when it happened way back when too.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I feel like every event that happens regarding the election was held through, say, another organization and not necessarily directly attached or supplied from Bentley, which is something that I view as a very, very big problem.
Yeah, and I think we also have like the Bentley Democrats and Bentley Republicans like orgs, and I don't think I really saw much presence of either of those organizations like on our campus at this time. And I don't know if it's because like they're inactive. I don't have like as much information as I would like to on that. But I know when I first got to Bentley, like my freshman year, like they would literally have like debates, like the two orgs would debate and like share information on like how to register to vote and like everything like that. And I just think that it was like a missed opportunity. And I also think that like we didn't get to like educate our students either, because like we can't be partisan if we're a cultural organization or like a student organization, because people share so many different views. We didn't get to have like the space to like have those like blatant conversations about like, okay, these are the issues that we're agreeing with, this is what we're not agreeing with, because we have to be mindful of like who's saying what, who's around, and like what we're representing at the same time.
Yeah, and I will say on that as well, not normalizing a conversation about politics makes for more tension around it.
Yeah.
It's hard to really have a genuine and like flowing conversation of two people from different political parties whenever it's not normalized to have those conversations,
Yeah.
and it almost feels like taboo. It almost feels like you're pitted against each other.
Yeah.
Whenever at the end of the day, it's all collaborative. We're all going to be like together. We all have to communicate. So I think that's something that we definitely need to build more on going forward as a community.
Yeah. I think like it's very important that you mentioned that, because emphasis on the stage of life that we're at right now. I feel like the next election that we're going to have is going to be, presidential election is going to be 4 years from now, right? We're all going to be out of here. We're going to be way older, and the longer that you're old, certain beliefs and like the longer that it's like a taboo thing to talk about, it's going to be more ingrained that way. So I think definitely having it be more of something that's encouraged to speak about would have been great. That's why I was thinking it's important to talk about it during this episode, because we do have the platform to do that. So I was also looking through my email, and I'm seeing, on the 6th, they had, Wednesday the 6th, they had, like, the alpacas.
They had random alpacas come, yes.
Yeah, they had the relationship and sexual violence prevention educators. They have therapy dogs. Let me see, what else? I do see the email from Miss Claudette.
Shout out.
I'm not seeing anything else that's really like, everybody makes, like, even letting us, like, I'm not even going to lie. Based on emails alone, I don't even think you'd know that there was an election at all. Hold on. The only emails I'm seeing aren't from Bentley.
It was so dystopian the next day. Like, I was crying in class. I'm like, people are asking me, are you okay? I was like, obviously I'm not okay. Like, what do you mean? And I'm, like, walking around. I remember I was walking to class in the morning, and I literally heard somebody driving by playing American flag music, like, windows down, like, just, like, blaring it. And I was like, oh, my gosh, what's, like, going on? Like, this is, like, not, like, a real world right now. Some professors, like, didn't even speak about it at all. Some professors asked, did you want to talk about it or not? And, like, we were all like, yeah, we don't want to talk about it, because, like, when you do have conversations like that, it puts people on the spot, too, obviously. And I think that there's, like, such a mix of, like, emotions that, like, you need to support all the range of emotions. I feel like Bentley just felt like they were like had their hands tied, because they were like, well, we don't know what to do. There's so much going on, which isn't really an excuse. But I feel like time and time again, we've seen Bentley just kind of like take a back seat when there's like larger, like global or even like country, like nationwide, like issues going on. And once again, like I said, they just play the middleman because they feel like it's just easiest to like not take any action. But in reality, that's actually even more harmful to the communities than it would be to like say something wrong.
I think that's definitely notable, especially because like there's like something called the bystander effect, and I think that's what a lot of people suffer, especially today, because they always feel the sense of ambiguity and like powerlessness, because like they always say like, oh, if my vote doesn't matter because a million other people are voting, and then that just builds off upon other people, and then it keeps building on, and then it has more of an impact than they realize. And I think that's the roughest part about the thing on campus, because as you said, like it was so, we felt so alienated and it was so dead the day after. And I think it's the roughest part because especially at a PWI, you want to come together and have some sort of solidarity at a campus at a campus with this little amount of POCs. So I think this is the roughest part for me.
I'm glad you mentioned people believing that their vote does not matter, because that is just a terrible like echoed effect that scales to major levels, which is something that needs to be absolutely stopped. I know so many people in my personal life, friends, some that are even on this campus, who just straight up said that they're not voting, that it does not matter, and that their vote is minuscule compared to the larger scale of things. The amount of people who think like that are actively contributing to a greater evil, which is something that needs to be stopped, because as we get old, like Mitch said earlier, we're in the most like the next phase of our life. Whenever we have to vote again, it is going to be a complete different like time frame, and that is something that we need to overcome.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Oh dang, I had something to say about that as well. Okay, yeah, I was thinking, okay, what I was thinking about during high school, last election was 2020, right?
Yeah, COVID time.
Yeah, so during high school, it was something like my teachers couldn't speak about political views and like their personal political views, or like, and try, because that would like influence us at a young age. I'm not sure if it's like that the same way here. And I also know like it's kind of weird because like Yeah, back to like it was just like it just felt like you wouldn't even know like that anything had happened for real. Cause me personally, the people I was speaking to, it was nobody. Well, yeah, cause I hadn't seen Jaychele that day or anybody. Like it was just more like it wasn't like emotionless, to be honest. Like there was nobody who I saw who was like super happy and giddy, and there was nobody who I saw who was like super upset. It was just kind of like another day.
I think everybody was playing defense. Like that's what it felt like. Like everybody was like, well, I have the inability to hide my emotions, so I could not hide it. I also felt like a heightened sense of visibility. Being a Black woman, obviously, like I represent the person that lost, so they were like looking at me, like I guess feeling some type of like pity, maybe, or something like that. And I think that also at the same time, I felt extremely scared and extremely targeted because of my role representing the full Black Canada body. I was like, I feel like I'm in a heightened position where like I could be a target, and I felt like I didn't receive any support. Like I didn't, like I don't know how much I can disclose, but I didn't get a message from President Cray until like 8 p.m. when like there were already things about like discrimination already happening, and he reached out like as a reactionary measure. I would have appreciated some people reaching out as like a precautionary measure, like. I feel like we need to better support our targeted identities. Not that I feel like Bentley is a super big school where there's like, oh, there's going to be a hate crime that happens or something like that. Like I'm going to get hit by a car. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like more individual, like interpersonal instances of like discrimination. And like I have had some like, one-off comments where it's like, oh, like I think I was wearing a Kamala shirt the day before the election. No, I was wearing a Kamala shirt and a Kamala pin the day of the election. And people were, like, literally looking at me like, oh, my God, why is she wearing that? Like, all of those, like, like, smaller comments. But I feel like even psychologically, I felt psychologically unsafe, which is what I feel like I really needed that support from. So, like, speaking really about resources, I didn't feel like there were any resources for me besides the Multicultural Center that I could go to and feel heard, because everybody feels like they need to play the middleman. So if they support me, are they, choosing a side? I feel like that's why a lot of adults or, like, staff members decided to, like, kind of, like, sit this one out.
Yeah, and I think that's just another like reiteration of really putting appreciation on those like professors and like members of like the Bentley workforce that actually reached out and stepped up to like give out resources. Because I know, once again in my class, shout out Tracy Abbott.
I love Tracy.
She's so cool. But yeah, she gave a ton of resources, and she sat there and had conversation with us, and she talked about everything we wanted to know and everything that she feels like we should have knew. And that's very important, especially as a professor.
Indeed.
Yeah, I think it's very important because with professors, I think they recognize that they have a position, especially a position and a relationship with students. And I think it's very important to notice that, because as a professor, you're basically with them the entire semester. And there needs to be some sort of like, I guess, conversation between them. Because I know for me, I had a professor that basically moved our test a whole week back just for the election. And he really wanted us to focus on that because he knew that we were the next generation. I think that's really important to notice, because with the election, because our test was supposed to be that Wednesday and election was on Tuesday. And he was like, I want you guys to focus on the election. I'm moving the test all the way to next Wednesday, so don't worry about it. Just focus on the election. And I think that really touched everyone's heart in that class, because of the fact that he recognized us and he knew that we were going to be the future. So I think that's really important, because one small action really affected the entire class.
It's definitely true.
Yeah, to build up that, I had one professor do the exact same thing, where she made sure to tell us that although that this is a grade and this is your life right now, you're voting for your life in the future. And I think, not that I wasn't already paying attention to the election, but definitely I did find myself stepping back. Like, I am focusing 100% too much on what is going on academically rather than what is going on around me politically, which allowed me to, I needed to take a better view, and that step back really helped me.
I feel like when professors do that, they also have their students who might not be thinking about their election acknowledge the privilege of not thinking about the election. Not caring about who's the president is such a privilege. Like, that means that you know you're not going to be affected by what the results are. But when you are thinking about that, like, I was constantly anxious. I know I'm going to be affected. Like, I know I'm likely the target, like one of the targeted identities under the Trump administration. So having like to take that step back and like moving the dates, I think that's so beneficial not only for students' mental health and like levels of stress and anxiety that they already have going into tests, but on top of it, it also allows for a period of like reflection, which is really required for the election. Like I think that's what this whole week has been, honestly. After the election, it's like everybody reflecting and like seeing all of the like fallout and everything, and like taking that in however they feel like is best suited for them. But I think it's also really important to like think about why you don't care about the election. If you're saying your vote doesn't matter, why do you care? Why are you thinking that? Because even if my vote doesn't matter, I still don't care. I'm still gonna make my voice heard. If I know that this like cause is important to me, I would still want to, you know, kind of align myself with it. So I think like just kind of like reanalyzing like how you're actually perceiving the election, how you perceive politics in general. Because if you don't care about politics generally, that means that there's some form of privilege that you're exhibiting.
I think it's really important also to know, like, to kind of, especially within friends and relationships, I think it's best to kind of foster a culture of accountability. Because I know a lot of people say, like, oh, I don't want politics to get into my friends' relationships. Like, it should. Like,
oh, it's in all of my relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
All of my
so
friendships.
I really think that with friends who, like, say, oh, I'm not going to vote, I really want to, I tell them straight up that you should vote and that your vote matters. And then I know, like, if it causes like some sort of conflict, then they shouldn't be my friend in the first place. Because if they're thinking that politics isn't in their life, then I feel like they're in the wrong.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like this election, I had a bunch of conversations with people who were like on the different like political side, a political party than me, but look the same as like I would. And I feel like I tried my best to like communicate with them in a way that they would like understand or best receive it. But a lot of times it does kind of like leave you feeling like you have to just like let some relationships like just like die and settle, because like people have their deep rooted beliefs, and that's really what's the most challenging to kind of like confront, especially in a like long standing friendship, is like if you haven't talked about those beliefs before and you talk about them for the first time, like you've been friends for like 3-4 years, like you came to college, you're juniors, you don't talk about politics, and now the election is happening, that really could break up a friendship, unfortunately. But like that's something that I feel like it's important to like kind of like set the middle ground for when you first become friends. Like that's something like I normally talk about with my friends. Like my identity is so important to me, especially like my identity in relation to politics. I speak about politics regularly because it is something that regularly affects my life. So for me, that's a regular topic that comes up. So I feel like I shouldn't be kind of, you know, too worried, like, are we sitting on the same side? Because if you're sitting on the other side of me, obviously I think that you're imposing on my rights if you're voting for a person who doesn't believe that I deserve to really exist. So I think it's like, I can't really have the, like, split relationships with, like, oh, I don't talk about politics, but that's still my friend. I feel like I have, like, maybe one friend who's a Trump supporter, and I told them not to vote. I didn't even say vote. I said just don't vote. That was like my piece that I lived with. The next morning they taunted me about the election. I was like, okay, we are not friends anymore. So I feel like it does break up relationships at some point in time, and it's just like a part of growing up that unfortunately that like things like that are going to get in the middle of your friendships or relationships.
Yeah, and I think all that stems from people not believing how much this affects people's life, and there's always a subtle privilege hidden in it. It's the same logic to people who say that, oh, like, if this person gets elected, if this person gets elected, it doesn't matter. We're just still gonna live life. There's so much privilege like laid in that sentence, and I've heard it so much on social media, in public, and in like genuine real life. I've heard it so much that, oh, the election doesn't matter. Oh, you're overreacting. But people do not understand how much privilege is like laid in that sentence, and to be able not to care about an election is insane.
All right, y'all, don't cancel me. So I feel like, okay, my question to you is, so it's absolutely not possible for you to be friends or like have a close relationship with somebody of a different political view?
I would say no, and I can explain why. I feel very solid on, I would say, 3 to 4 key policies. One of them, LGBTQ plus rights, immigration rights, and abortion rights.
Yeah.
And if you stand against those, then you stand against a large part of my identity or my culture's identity. And if you feel like that, then there's no reason for you and me to be friends. I feel like because those issues are so deeply tied to my identity, especially me being a Black woman as well, and, you know, being a Black woman who's queer, I don't normally disclose that to my, like external group of friends. I'll tell my close friends, but like if you're like a person I see in passing, I'd not normally like out like that. So for me, I need to feel comfortable sharing my full self and my full identity with you, knowing that you're not going to judge me, knowing that you're not going to oppose what I'm feeling, knowing that you're not going to question how I like to move through the world. And for me, it's just much easier for me to be friends with people who have those same beliefs. And it's something I'm going to talk about because I'm an activist. I'm an advocate. That's just who I am, and that's my natural personality. But I can see for people who feel like those issues don't concern them, that you don't have to talk about them. But for me, they concern me, so I have to speak about them.
Yeah, and I think that's mainly the difference, to answer your question, Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
For me, picking acquaintances and friends.
Yeah.
For my friends, I completely agree with Jaychele. Like, if I feel you're opposing me and, like, my cultural background, which I, like, care so much for, if I feel you're opposing me, there's no need for us to be friends. We could be acquaintances, and that's not so much to say that if you have different political beliefs than me, I will never talk to you. I'm always open to having conversation, communication, because I believe communication is so important.
Mm-hmm.
But to consider someone a friend and they actively oppose something that is very important to me, it would never happen.
No, that's okay. I'm not even gonna lie. Right now, I'm scrolling through, like, the policy.
Are you reading Project 2025?
No, I saw that there, but I haven't clicked on it yet. Okay, for people who know me, I'm a Timu warrior. I'm very familiar and I'm very close friends with a China man. So, adding tariffs on goods from China breaks my heart, unfortunately.
Are you a TikTok shopper?
I don't shop on TikTok, but I might as well.
I love TikTok shop. My pants are on TikTok shop right now. And my shoes and my bag. Actually, like more than half of my outfit is from TikTok shop right now.
Nah,
So-
shout out to China. Personally, I rock with China. But yeah, I feel like definitely I'm looking at a lot of these policies. Because, okay, let me talk about an experience I had during this summer. So on the last day of my fellowship program, I went out with like a couple of the friends that I made, and we went out to see like the Statue of Liberty. That we got going to get some food, and then one of my like teammates, she asked me, "Oh, like you're voting for Kamala, right?" So I was trolling, right? And I was like, "No, I'm about to vote for Trump." And she had like a very, very.
Was she a
serious
black woman?
reaction. Yeah, she's
Okay.
hijabi. She was like, "Oh, you feel me?" Like she was like, "No way." So, but after that, I told her that I was trolling, but I was with another one. We were with another one of our friends who said that he was like genuinely voting for Donald Trump. And at that, up until that point in my life, I never had anybody really ask me, like, never had a direct political conversation with anybody my age, like, genuinely, never had it come up like that and be, like, a serious topic. Because after that, like, they were just talking about, like, specific details about, like, the policies, promises, the past, the future. And I was like, dang, I definitely need to educate myself a lot more because I didn't really even have anything to say. Like, I just didn't know. So I feel like I know there are a lot of other people who might feel that way. And I was taking a look at another one of these articles. I was saying, like, particularly for younger men of color, we're a group that is easy to sway left or right. And
You're like a target group for both parties.
Yeah, it's like very surprising to think that. And it's like, it's very important as well because, with how many people, as Michael was saying earlier, the amount of people that vote and the amount of people that don't vote is very important. And it also touched me specifically because my FDS professor, we did like FDS on democracy. And that was something like during my freshman year. And that was something that he was emphasizing heavily, that we need to vote. Like literally we talked about democracy every single week for like the entire semester. So it's like burned into my brain. So, shout out Professor Einberts. But I feel like everybody should adopt that or at least start thinking about it a little bit more at the least.
If I could just talk for like one quick second about like the voters of color specifically, that is a block that has been so sought after by both parties. Originally, historically, since the abolition of slavery, voters of color, specifically Black and Latinx voters, have always been Democrats.
Yeah.
Specifically, there's a lock on Black women. They basically say that Black women will never vote Republican, which I think is honestly true. I don't see myself voting for Republican. But they say that because of the policies that affect women, like abortion rights and, child care and, all of those things, they're a lock on the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
But because those policies don't necessarily affect men of color, specifically Black and Latinx men, which we saw actually really sway the election And if you look at the Latinx male vote and how much of them turned out for Donald Trump, you can see that actually was a big part in swaying the election for him, even though most times it's honestly convincing you to vote against your best interest if you are a person of color, because the Democratic Party doesn't always prioritize people of color, but they will do more necessarily, like this is like generalization, to support communities of color, specifically if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, if you look at any of the treatment after that we've seen for communities of color. And also on top of that, a lot of the reason that the Democrats feel supported, or that they feel like they can support the communities of color, is because they provide programs like welfare and Social Security and all of those programs that like really support and stimulate low-income communities. So they feel like by doing that, they have earned the vote of people of color, which, is up for debate. But I just wanted to kind of like mention that it is such a I would say like split that we've seen recently, because in past years we haven't seen Black male voters or Latinx voters really sway the election by jumping to the other side. Also, I think it has to do with who was the candidate this year. But I have a lot of thoughts about like seeing a female president. I don't think that's going to happen in my lifetime after seeing this election. I had some hope, but now I don't feel like that's a possibility anymore because of the male voter block. But that was just my opinion that I wanted to share on that.
No, yeah, I feel like at this segment, at this part of the podcast episode, I wanted to really talk about like our personal feelings and opinions. So I think that we definitely transition nicely into that. I was thinking, okay, another question. So let's say you're in a work situation. So this is something that I've been thinking about personally. Like I never know who I'm around, because like something I think is very important is like that I make sure that I network with as many people as possible, and make sure build those connections. And, in order to do that, you got to have things in common. And so, I was joking with my friend Hugh. I started looking up, like, different fishing rods and stuff like that, educating myself.
You have golf equipment?
I don't, but my roommate does,
Okay.
and he's allowed me to borrow it on numerous occasions. So, my swing is getting a little nasty. I'm playing.
You need golf equipment and a watch.
Oh, yeah.
As a man, that's what you...
I have a watch, but I feel like, I want it to look like low status. Okay. I don't know how to explain it. I don't want to look like I'm better than anybody at this stage of my life, at least. Maybe for occasions, but okay. I used to wear a watch on a daily. Anyway, going back to what I was saying originally. Let's say, like, I never know if maybe my boss or somebody who's, like, an important figure is going to, I never know, like, how they're going to be leaning politically. So just because of that, I never say anything publicly that would say that I'm leaning towards one side or another. And I do feel like that contributes to being like impartial. Being impartial, like in social situations, increases the stigma, and I feel like that isn't really a good thing. But also, I'm curious to see like how would you react in situations like that? Like, do you think it's important that you stand on your values, or that you read the room?
I'll let you guys answer first.
Okay, honestly, given what you're talking about, I think there's not a definitive answer for one side.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to think about how I'd go about that. Because there's levels to it. I wouldn't necessarily go around approaching or like just instantly talking politics with everyone at the workplace just because that's not a normal thing to do.
Yeah, that's true.
There's levels to it. But also, given the fact that if somebody were to say something like, say, really out of pocket or really like something that really, really went against what I believed, I'd have to say something. But I don't think I think it's a nice blend, because I don't think in the sense of, I don't think it's a negative thing to like not always be talking about politics. But whenever you start muting yourself for sacrificing sake of others, then it becomes a problem.
Okay, so it's like a scale. That makes sense.
I have a thought if you want to.
Wait, can you repeat the question actually?
So let's say you're in a work situation, actually, to make it a little bit more specific, it doesn't even have to be like directly in the office. Like, you could be like after work you went to the bar with like your boss's boss.
Yeah.
You just happen to be there together chopping it up.
Yeah.
And he says something that's like, either leans, a certain way. Let's say you disagree with it. Are you gonna say anything about it, or just continue laughing or read the room, or stick to your original beliefs?
I really think that if it's a workplace where where the boss's boss is making those jokes, I don't think I belong there. So I'm gonna bring it up first things first, especially because now I'm outside of work. I finished my day, and then I can actually talk to him. I would say that I would actually bring it up first thing, because if I brush it off, the only thing that's going to happen is he's going to continue making those jokes, obviously, right? So I think that I would want to be the change and kind of initiate the conversation, because if I don't talk to him, who will, And I think that that'll continue in the workplace, where if people like me come into that workforce and then also experience that, I don't want that to happen. So I think that's what I would do.
I think that's a great answer.
A solid.
Yeah, that was a good answer. Yeah, I very much agree with that. I was gonna say, especially because of my major, which it's so interesting now that I'm like a DEI major and like Trump doesn't believe in DEI. I'm like, how am I gonna get a job? But I think regardless, I'm always being hired for the value that I provide in terms of using my voice, sharing my opinion, and speaking up for the communities that are around me, and even like problem solving. So I think with that, I would always have to say something. It's just naturally in my nature to say something. But like you said, I wouldn't just go around just saying, I'm a Kamala supporter. Like, I voted for Kamala. I'm not just going to like walk around and boast that. I would more so just like whenever that conversation does come up, I'm not going to back down. And I feel like I would stand on my beliefs. But at the same time, like I know enough of like how my identity is perceived to people that they wouldn't really bring a conversation to me like that unless they know how that conversation is going to go. Like we talked about that voting block. Black women are basically always going to vote, Democratic. So if you come to me, you likely know like that assumption has been made for me. But I also want to speak about something I learned in class today. In Mateo Cruz's class, we were talking about like inclusion in the workplace and inclusion in environments. And he showed this model of like how your level of uniqueness in contrast with your level of belongingness really places you on like one of these four positions. And one of the positions was assimilation. And assimilation basically means you feel like you belong, but you can't have your voice be heard. And the example he used for that was a police officer, where you feel like there's a strong sense of belonging, even the military as well. Yeah. There's a strong sense of camaraderie, and you feel like you're a part of a team, but you're not supposed to have a dissenting opinion. You cannot share anything that's like not agreeable. And I feel like for me, I could never be in a situation where I have to assimilate. I feel like I assimilate naturally. Like being a Black woman, I have to kind of like fit into, the culture around me, but I can't take it that far where I'm no longer able to share my opinion. My opinion is, I feel like, what gets me into those positions. I feel like I'm hired most times for the opinion and the diversity that I bring to the table. So I would like to be able to share my opinion, and if I can't do that, I shouldn't be there, like you said.
No, that's real. All right, well, the last thing that I wanted to touch upon was the stock market and those implications. One thing that I read in an article yesterday was that since the decision was announced, Bitcoin had gone up 29% to a high of $88,000. And yesterday when I was in class at around 4 p.m., it was at $89,000. Today, if I check it, it might be at 90. I feel like it's going to hit six figures. So with that being said, I know there are a lot of people right now who are making money from, based on the decision that was made. So I guess a place to start is, on a scale between, things that are important to you as far as your values and your mores, and that to financial and material gain, where do you think is the most, well, okay, that's a kind of a dumb question, but like, where do you think most people fall? I guess that's where we could start.
I think it depends on your income level. I think a lot of people, some people voted based off of the miseducation in regards to the economy. Specifically, I think Black and brown communities are miseducated on how the economy affects us. Specifically looking at tax cuts and tax reform and all of those things, saying that, like, I want lower taxes, I want a stimulus check.
I fully agree with that. I do.
There is so much miseducation, and we were never taught properly, one, how to manage money, but two, how money flows, like the trickle-down economics. it don't ever trickle down. It don't ever get down here. So I don't think we should be worried about the tax cuts. I don't think any of that necessarily concerns us. Also, I think speaking about the stock market, and I think I was speaking about tariffs and everything like that earlier, a lot of that I believe is really going to, we're going to see the effects within the next 2 years. We're not going to see any of those effects right now. And a lot of times when we were speaking about the economy and how Biden has a horrible economy, it is not technically even Biden's economy. That's the economy isn't reflective of your performance like immediately. And I think Obama shared a tweet I think maybe a month ago or so, speaking about how any president would have given out stimulus checks, and his name was Trump's name wasn't even supposed to be on it. It's illegal to put your name on a stimulus check, and he literally lobbied Congress to do so. And also the effects that we saw on the economy during Trump's term were really the I guess the results of all the work that Obama had been doing to kind of remedy the economy at the time after the Great Recession, everything like that. So I think in terms of that, there is a lot of miseducation. So we can't have informed conversations about how the economy is tied to the presidential, the presidential election and even the president's office in general, because there's no direct connection that we're taught in class. We're never okay, the president does this, so the economy is going to go up or the economy is going to go down. It's never really that simple. And especially for me, I don't understand the economy. I'm not a finance major. I didn't come to Bentley planning to do anything related to business. I've just only learned from my own personal research and from going out and doing the work, and not everybody's going to do that. And I think that's why voting is also very scary, because people vote without knowing anything, and they just go, I just like this person because of what I saw on this podcast. And that's so uneducated and misinformed that I think there's a vast misunderstanding of how communities of color are really affected by the president, and how their pockets are even affected. Trump doesn't even necessarily believe in minimum wage, and we're over here voting for him, and y'all are getting paid minimum wage. I just don't understand that correlation. So I think that there's a lot of education work that needs to be done, but I don't know how you do that. I don't think you could just put people in camps and say, we're going to teach you about the economy today. That's not how we can really teach America. So there's a lot of work to be done before I think we can even vote for a president based on the economy. I think a lot of times when we even talk about the economy, everybody's misinformed about it. And I'm not even the most informed, and I just went on a whole rant about it. So, I mean, somebody can fact check me and tell me I'm wrong. But I think that there's a lot of learning to be done, because there's so many years of miseducation, because it's how people get elected is based off of miseducation.
I agree.
Did I just give a finance answer? Did I give
I was looking at my finance notes from yesterday, actually. So my professor said, well, looking at the stocks that are going up, it's like a castle in the sky. It appears, and it's oh my gosh, that's so crazy. But it's gonna fall quick. If there's a castle that just appears. So make sure you're able to run for the exit. And then he also talked about the tenets of Howard Marks yesterday. The first one was essentially, to succeed, you must engage in second-level thinking. So you got to think about what the implications of things are. Sometimes things that look good or look bad, in the first, layer, are different. The second layer is very different. And then very similar to what you were saying is, you got to know what you own and have a sense of intrinsic value. If you were just okay, we're gonna get money to get it, or you're seeing green, so things are good. It's you gotta understand, is that just because of everybody's excitement right now, because there's a trend, or is there actually any value that's been added? Is there anything that's actually different from this time last week? In the you gotta think specifically in the different parts of the economy or for particular companies, just think about it more deeply. So yeah, that's really what I had to add.
Yeah, and I think there's a severe lack of skill in seeing in the future. I feel a large majority of people, whenever they make decisions, especially regarding the economics now, they want short-term benefit, but they don't look into the future. They don't see the larger implications that are going to happen from their decisions, which I think is something that is very crucial to understand. I know I already talked about it once, but higher education losing, I want to say, I believe they're reducing the amount of working visas allowed for international students. Our companies are limited to the amount of ones they can give out. So overall, that would reduce the levels of international students getting employed in the U.S., meaning that there's no longer a real reason to come to the U.S. to find an education, because the lack of insurity of getting a job is already falling down so highly. and that's overall going to affect a large amount of people.
Yeah.
And not having a lot of people be able to get into education leads to uneducated people. So,
And that is not what we want.
And I think even to go back a little bit to campaign promises, I think a lot of the economic policies that Kamala shared were very much overlooked when we were speaking about her as a candidate. She wanted to, I think it was $10,000 or $15,000 tax credits for small businesses. She wanted to give tax credits. I think it was $3,000 to newborn families, and had a full structure of how like families could get even higher tax credits through their taxes if they were funding their families and everything like that. And I think when we really were speaking about the economy, it was really just focused on like harm reduction. Like how do we kind of like focus on like getting the level of inflation like lower. Yes, the level of inflation lower. I told you I'm not like an economic girl, but I think we were really focused on like how do we solve things in this instance rather than like how do we focus on like building wealth for the future, like how do we get more homeowners, like how do we focus on like giving more value to our communities rather than just focusing on like let's fix the problem that's going on right now that's still a problem from COVID, which is a problem that he didn't solve to begin with. So I think it was a short-sighted economic discussion that we had.
Yeah, it definitely felt like a factor of retaining wealth versus establishing and building new wealth, which is obviously going to be unappealing for some people, which I think plays a lot into the role of the economy so far.
100%. Well, with that being said, if there isn't anything else to add, thank you so much for being a part of this episode with us, Jaychele. It was great to have you back on the podcast and for giving your honest opinions and insights on the election. Thank you as well. Thank you everybody who was a part of this conversation overall, honestly. We covered a lot. We talked about, before even our personal opinions, we spoke about like the different resources or the lack of them on Bentley campus and how we felt about that and the lack of emphasis on the importance of this election. We talked about, we talked about the campaign promises in the first 100 days. Make sure to go over those and what, the future might be looking like based on what the information that we know right now. And I'd also like to emphasize how, once again, how important it is for people who are of our age and, this generation to be politically active and to make sure that we have, honest, respectful conversations and that we're able to, that we're able to create an environment that's like safe for everybody and that we have that at the forefront of our minds. Yes. One other thing I wanted to mention for Blue Table was that you will be seeing us very soon. Depending on when this episode comes out, we will be out and about at the different food events. We have Food Fest coming up, Asian Night Market. We'll be out and about at all of those. So make sure that...
Taste of Africa as well.
Yeah, of course.
Tomorrow.
He was excited.
How could I forget? We'll definitely be out and about. So make sure you say hello to us because we will be saying hello to you. All right. Thank you all for tuning in.